Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about building your own website. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, "Hi Frederick, I would like to build my own website. How can I go about it?" Well, that is a nice and open and easy question to answer. So before we get into it, I want you to sort of have a think about, because based on what your question is, I can't really tell at what level and what scale of a website you want. Now, the reason why I'm getting a little bit nitpicky about the details here is because usually when people have this idea of building a website, they they just want to they haven't really thought about to what level do you need to customize that website, what features do you need, and so forth, because it may not seem that way, but it's quite different from to just create a really nice landing page where you have a bunch of nice images and things like that just act, say, the classic old school personal website type of thing, which is just one single page with a lot of, like, usually attention to, like, design elements and things like that, versus, say, to build something like, I don't know, Facebook, YouTube, something like that, where you have a lot of features and a lot of functionality, because as we call them, it doesn't have to be, but for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to call it a static website, which is mostly just displaying information without a lot of functionality or like input output type of thing. That is usually an easier thing to do, but even if you go that route, there's another question to be asked, and that is, okay, so to what level do you need to customize this website? Because if you need a lot of like very specific customization and you want to build it from scratch, like I do and my coworkers do, then the skills that you will need in order to do that is going to be a little bit higher than, let's say, if you go with something like WordPress, or if you go with, there's tons of these like low code options that are very useful, and like very if your goal is just to get a website, then, and you don't really have like tons and tons of experience building websites or anything like that, and you're not interested in learning that, then please use a low code option, or like a no code option, because there's so much of these types of things, right, where a lot of that work has gone, like, and someone else has made it easier for you, because it will take you, trust me when I say this, it took me years to get good at just styling a website with CSS and all the stuff that we use in my daily job. And frankly speaking, the only reason why we do it that way is because there is a need for it, where we have customers or so forth that really need to have a look and feel that is specific to whatever their needs are. Or let's say that they need to have like all different types of functionality, like creating content, updating content, and things like that on the website, where they might have tons of different systems that are connecting to the website, and so forth and so forth. When you do things at that level, that's what we call usually a professional level software developer. But if you're only looking to make your own website, for example, WordPress is a good alternative, or Magento, or like Drupal. Like, there's tons of these. Search on it there, and like their entire website hosting companies that basically make that super easy for you. The trade-off, which is important to know about here, is that a lot of these platforms, they try to be very accommodating with your own customization needs, so that you can customize. But of course, if you have someone build the system for you, they will at some point, you might find that something you want to do may not be possible to do. That's not a given, as I said, depending on what you need. If you just need a personal website and you want to style it a little bit and make it your own, most low code, no code platforms will be able to give you that. And of course, building it yourself from scratch will also do that, but it's, as I said, it's much harder. And as I said, main reason why you would want to build it from scratch like I do, and that's usually why people hire people like myself, is because they have a non-standard need. They have a very complicated system, or something that is not really going to be a good fit for a no-code, low-code type of solution, right? But for most laymen, people who just want to make their own website and feel it out and so forth, these are very good options. I would even go as far as to say that probably it's actually what's happening right now in my current, it's one of the projects that I'm running at my company right now actually. So one of the things that we have as an issue with our software developers or our web developers is that whenever they are asked to solve one of our customers or like one of our stakeholders and like their needs for any given system, due to the fact that they are so accustomed to having the skills necessary to build everything from scratch, that's the only thing they do. So when they are asked to make something, their first thought is, okay, we're going to have like a gigantic Kubernetes cluster, we're going to have 15 different microservices on day one, and there's going to be 2 different databases, and like they're already going into, as I was saying, like they're building it from scratch. And we are trying to teach them when that is the choice to be made and how to figure out when that is appropriate, and when something like WordPress or like I think the other day, hilarious if you ask me at the very least, we had a product manager who had already decided on behalf of the software team, which in of itself is a little bit weird, but he used to be a coder, so of course he knows his stuff, right? He had already decided that his application was going to run a microservices architecture with a Kubernetes cluster, multi-zone support, or like cross-region support, and with the option of scaling into a multi-cloud platform. Now, the site he wanted to have made was 2 pages with graphs. So there was there was a landing page which just showed a bunch of graphs showing like visualizing some data, and the other page had more or less the same thing, so a few charts basically. That's what he wanted. And in order to do that, he had planned of staffing up with an entire team of software developers to build him this, like, you know, set up the cloud accounts, spin up all the services with logging and so forth and so forth. And it wasn't me, it was one of the, because I was in the meeting, and one of our architects had asked the question. Immediately he said, why are you not using something like Power BI or some visualization tool for this? And he couldn't answer. And I sat there and I saw, this man has just done exactly what I wished all of the developers that I work with would. Instead of just thinking that, you know, the classic one, if all you have is a hammer, then every problem is a nail. Instead of understanding that the thing that this person really wants is to visualize some data, and there is a lot of products on the market that will do that without, you know, it's a cost thing, you know, because you're already thinking that because you focus on building things from scratch and that's the only option available, then you're forgetting that the thing that you are using those skills to do is to solve the problem on behalf of the stakeholder. Now, if the stakeholder isn't really in need of something that expensive, because it is expensive to build things from scratch in comparison to just having something that is already pre-made and fits your use case most of the time, not always, but in many cases. Well, why not pick that? Well, for software developers, it's a personal thing. Like, they don't think in those terms. They don't know what the projects are on the market. They don't know what is a standard problem, as I like to call it, and what is a non-standard problem. And that's the thing I'm trying to teach them. It's the same thing with you here. Depending on, like, if you want to build your website, you have to understand, okay, what type of website do I want? Am I trying to go with something that is fairly standard, and there are already a lot of low-code, no-code, or like even like services available that makes that really easy for me? Then go with that, because it's better for you. It's like, you know, different people need different levels of products and so forth. Some people are like really nerdy and they want to build everything from scratch, and some people need a pre-made thing that just is easy to use and stuff like that. You have to understand your own need. And only go for those like really advanced solutions, because that's a whole video. I have tons of videos on that. If you want to build like a production ready system that would fit something like Google or Facebook or like whatever big company you have, that's what I do for a living. But as you can imagine, that takes a lot of practice to get good at. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you want to build your own website, start by asking yourself, and I give the same advice to all the industry professionals that may or may not be listening now, always, as I say, make the solution stand in proportion to the problem. understand what type of website you're building, how advanced it has to be, and what features you need in order to make it the thing that you want it to be, and ask, okay, what is the easiest way that I can do? What's the easiest option to make this happen for me? And of course, if you know that it's going to be developed over time and it's going to get more and more advanced, then you might want to be a little bit preemptive and make it slightly less off the shelf, because that's the problem with off the shelf solutions often. If they fit your use case, then they're the best option. If they, on the other hand, force you into a position where it's hard for you to accommodate new features or things like that, then it's not a really good solution. And that's where you have to sort of know what's a good bet and what's not such a good bet. And that fundamentally comes down to understanding the project that you're trying to build and your needs. And so if you want to build a website that is like a simple little landing page or a very simple content management system, there are tons of projects on the market that will give you that, assuming that you're okay with some trade-offs there, because as you can imagine, there might be a situation where something very specific you want may not be so easy to do in such a platform. But on the other hand, if you really do know that you're going to need a lot of customization, or it's going to be a system that gets fairly advanced over time, well, then it might be worth considering working with something that allows you more power and freedom, which is the stuff that you do when you build things from scratch. Usually you don't have to go all the way down to build it from absolute scratch, but the rule of thumb that I like to apply is the more pre-made something is, the more likely you are to find yourself not being able to do something you want. The less stuff that is already pre-made and the more closer to building everything from scratch you get, the more freedom you have to make your own choices. But of course the trade-off is speed, skills, and money and stuff like that, because building from scratch is almost, not always, but almost always going to be more difficult and more expensive than having someone provide a solution for you. Have a great day.